Hello, everyone. I'm Anthony McAdoo, Executive Director of the Western Kentucky University Alumni Association. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our Hilltoppers at Work webinar series. The focus of today's webinar is interview strategies. This webinar is being recorded as a reminder and will be available on our site for future reference and sharing after today's broadcast. For those of you joining us during the live broadcast of this webinar, please be sure to use the chat feature to pose questions and interact with our presenter. So presenting this webinar series to our WKU alumni and friends is made possible through a partnership between the WKU Alumni Association and WKU Advising and Career Development Center. Joining us today from the Advising and Career Development Center is Adrienne Browning, Assistant Director and Professional Development Specialist with the center. Adrienne joined WKU and has served in multiple roles since April 1997, and she joined the Advising and Career Development Center in 2008. She currently serves as the center's assistant director and also continues her role as professional development specialist for the Gordon Ford College of Business, a position she has held since the fall of 2013. Adrienne works with students and alumni to build their resumes and cover letters, search for career opportunities, hone their interview skills, and exhibit professionalism. Adrienne, welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. So today I'm hoping that you all would take something away from these strategies. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about because everyone has to do an interview, and I know that you have already, we're going to pretend that you've already submitted a resume, you applied for the job, submitted the resume, and now you're gearing up for the interview. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I do want to show this slide. Mm-hmm. All right, so gearing up for the interview. To me, you all, I always tell the students and alumni that this is like a game. Understand that a job interview is an opportunity to meet with professionals to discuss your qualifications and tell them why you're a good fit for the company. So that's the true reason. Interviews can be done one-on-one or in a group setting. Understand that not one interview will be the same. It just won't. And that's why I think it's important to do as many interviews and practices so that way you know what to expect, you know how to make yourself better, because when the real one comes on, you're ready for it. So the more you practice, the more comfortable and better you're going to become. Understand, remember I just told you, it's like a game. This is how they're going to size you up. From the moment you walk in, they're looking at how you dress. They want to know, they're saying, do I like him? Do I like her? Is he or she going to be a risk? Because they're looking at your resume, remember, and they may decide you might be a job hopper and they might want to talk to you about that. Does he or she have the right credentials for this? Main thing I deal with a lot is, can he or she communicate? Can you get your points across? What can this person contribute to our company? Can he or she make a difference? And what makes you stand out from everyone else? But understand that from the moment you walk in, they already know whether they like you or not. So think about that. I was going to ask you, I want you to think about this. Best time to interview. I love asking this because some people say, I wish someone already told me this. I always tell students, through my research, of course, the best time to interview. They call you up and say, we're deciding on, we want you to interview and these are the days we have and you get to choose. I would choose Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday mornings between 9 and 11 because I'm coming off that weekend. And on that Monday, I'm tired and I'm trying to get acclimated back to my mindset. And then if you interview at 12 o'clock, of course, we're going to lunch. So you don't want to interrupt. You don't want any kind of interruptions that may come up. You do not want to compete with people's lunchtime. And employers are less of a rush to clear their desk off at the end of the day. What I'm learning also, you all, is that when they set up the interview, people are forgetting to ask, is this Central Time or Eastern Time? And I've had people contact me and say, oh my gosh, I'm having to call and reschedule this interview because I didn't ask that, they didn't clarify it. You need to make sure that when you schedule an interview, understand that if you're in Kentucky, we are on the Central Time. And if it's going to be in another state that is on Eastern Time, you're going to be an hour behind. Make sure you do that. But make sure that when you interview and you get to choose, make it a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday between 9 and 11. All right, so here we are in this pandemic, and things have changed drastically and quickly. I did about 22 mock interviews with the class, and I did it by telephone because at that time we were switching over to all these things, and I had already helped students do interviews virtually, but some things have changed, right? And I'll tell you a few of those. With both of these, before you do an interview, you have to do your research on the company. And you're gonna see a slide, and I'm gonna tell you why. You have to get directions. If you can do a dry run the day before, and you need to find out who you're meeting with. So when they call you up and you have them on the phone talking about what day is best, ask who you're meeting with. Kind of get that sense of that. But then here we got virtually. Here we are. You got to use a professional name, as you see mine here. Nothing silly and immature. You want to make sure it's professional. You got to make sure that your laptop or your cell phone, desktop's working properly, because I'm going to tell you, my internet has not been the best, and we've increased it, and it's still not working the best. And I think it's because so many people are going and using Wi-Fi all at once. I think it crashes from time to time. You need to practice Zoom or Skyping. I have done that with a lot of students lately, and they've said, well, Ms. Browning, I have a roommate that I can practice with, but make sure your equipment is working properly. Remove all noises and distractions, such as a home phone, which I just asked someone to turn mine off. Music and children and pets running around. You might think it's cute, but believe me, it's not professional, so be careful of that. Another face-to-face tip, I've had students say, my appointment's at 9, so I got there at 9. Believe it or not, you're late. You need to get in that parking lot face-to-face when you're doing it face-to-face and park it about 30 minutes before. Kind of run things in your mind a little bit, get comfortable, and go in that place at least 15 minutes before, right? Virtually, guess what? We want to arrive at least 2 or 3 minutes before the employer gets there, because if you're in there any sooner, you're really too early nowadays. That's what I'm learning. When you're face to face, you gotta avoid all the distractions. I tell students and alumni, be careful of the earrings you wear, the perfume you wear. All of these are distractions you want to avoid. So you want them to hear you. You want them to be in tune with you, and you don't want anything that's going to distract. So so you don't want to clench your jaw or tap or play with your hair or be playing with a pen. You don't want to do any of that. So make sure that you avoid all of those things. One thing is, sometimes we don't understand the question that's being asked. And so it's okay to ask for clarification. They rather you do that than to answer something and makes them realize she or he didn't even understand the question. So make sure you ask for clarification, or you just ask that interviewer to repeat the question. All right, so virtually, when you're responding, it's good to look directly into the webcam, because and not different images on the screen. I have on glasses, and I was in a Zoom meeting, and someone said that as I was flipping through my email, they could see the reflection. So you have to be careful of that. So when you're in the Zoom meeting, in that interview, you make sure that you wear your glasses and you're strictly looking at the webcam. What I've learned also is that you cannot speak too quickly. That is why I'm speaking the way I am, because I talk very, very quickly. So I have to slow things down, be clear, because if I'm speaking too fast, you're not going to hear what I'm saying. You're going to miss something. So those are the things that I'm learning through practicing and through my research. Remember, I told you they're sizing you up from the moment you walk in. So you know that when you're face to face, you want to wear a professional suit for men and women. You want to make sure that you're well groomed. You want to make sure you don't have your nails are not chipped with nail polish. You got to be careful. Be careful of all of these distractions, because they're going to notice that and already judge you, right? Do you know that when we're doing it virtually, I have had students say to me that while they were interviewing by Skype, people have asked them to stand up to show their entire outfit. They wanted to see if they were wearing some kind of shorts instead of dress pants. And that is why I tell students, when you're doing a Zoom or Skype, make sure you dress from head to toe, because you're always being tested. This is a test to see how well you follow instructions, to see how well you're prepared, and you want to make sure that you are the person they want to hire. Now, during this pandemic, mask versus not wearing a mask, when you are going to an interview, I suggest to take a mask just in case. And nowadays during interviews, when they're doing it face-to-face, they are asking you if you feel comfortable wearing one, and they will supply one to you. So take one just in case. If you feel that you feel more comfortable wearing one, believe me, they'll respect that. Something I don't like to see is that people will have chewing gum and they're smacking and talking to me, and I can see the big green in their mouth. That's a big distractor. You need to make sure you remove your chewing gum before you interview. Make sure you're mentally preparing in that parking lot. Be sure you're friendly to everyone you come in contact with. I can share so many stories, but I don't have a lot of time. But let me tell you, people, you don't know who's watching you. You really don't. It's all a test. From the moment you leave that parking lot until the time you get to that building, they are watching you, and you're going to be tested. Be positive. I tell people interviews are like rainbows, unicorns, and Skittles. It's all about perception, and you have to be positive. Make sure you're giving good eye contact, and I'm gonna tell you a little cheat. I'm gonna tell you my little cheat thing I do. I tell students all the time, and alumni, I never look at anyone in the eye when I'm talking to them, but you would never know it, because I put everyone's face in a box. That's right. I've worked for presidents and deans, and that's my secret. Now it's out, it's on tape. But I put everyone's face in a box, and I look at their nose, I look at their lips, I look at everything, but I never look at them in their eyes, and you would never know it. So that's the trick, to get perfect eye contact. When you're sitting up straight in an interview, it speaks confidence. If you're slouchy, it speaks that you're not. So make sure that when you're sitting up straight and you're given that great posture, and you're speaking and looking at them, and you're able to communicate clearly. Please do not take coffee. Don't go by Starbucks and drink your coffee before this interview. Pet peeve of employers and mine. I will share with you real quickly. I do about over 300 interviews a semester, just with classes, and then I do individual ones. So I'm used to practicing. When you go to an interview, make sure that let them offer you something to drink. And when you accept, make sure it's only water, because you don't want anything to spill on your suit, and that is clear. Interview questions. Man, can I give you a list of interview questions? Practice out loud. I told you earlier, the more you practice, the better you're going to be. And the questions they're asking, I listed a couple of them. Tell me about yourself. That should be a 1-minute response. Nothing personal. That is a pet peeve. That is not. You want them to focus on what you can provide to the company. So you don't want to mention your age. You can tell them that you're a seasoned or experienced professional. You do not want to share that you're married with children. It's none of their business. HR lets us know when we conduct real interviews, that they let us know what is acceptable, what is legally correct, and asking personal questions is not. So don't share. So I always tell people to tell where they're from, share where they are currently working, share what their education, and anything you feel like is pertinent at that time, leadership skills, but it needs to be a 1-minute response. And I want you to be able to share that in 1 minute. That's your elevator pitch. What do you need them to know about you in that first minute? Why are you interested in working here? Please do your homework, because the single biggest reason you will not get this job is because you did not prepare, you didn't know anything about the company. And I don't want you to memorize anything. I want you to find something that you connect with through your research and talk about that. And because you're gonna feel so confident, you're gonna smile when you're talking about it, and you're not trying to memorize when they started, because they don't wanna hear that boring stuff. They wanna know what made you want to apply for this job. Oh my goodness, behavioral type questions. Back in the day, they would ask you questions that were hypothetical. Tell me, what would you do if you were on the phone and then someone walked in? Who would you help first? No, they want to know, how did you deal with that? For example, tell me about a time you made a mistake. What was the mistake and what did you learn? Employers, they don't care about the mistake that you made. They only care about, did you take ownership? Did you rectify it? And what did you learn? So I always tell people to end with, and what I learned from that was, share with them that I should have asked more questions. I should have slowed down. So those are the type of questions you're going to get. And I have a list of them. And at the end, I have my email, and I'd love to send them to you. Understand, you all, the biggest reason you won't get the job is because you could not answer that one question about, why are you interested in this position? Why do you want to work for us? And it's all about you knowing something about the company that you found relatable and interesting. If you can't answer that, the interview is truly over. They're going to go through the motions and the interview is pretty much over in their minds. All right. So I want you to think about specific examples from your recent or previous experiences and highlight that, highlight your skills and write them down. So if you've ever had an internship or any kind of work that's relevant to the position you're applying for, you need to write that down. You need to share how, if you were a part of a group project, even at work or in school, what was your role? If you were a part of part of WK's athletic team, or any kind of athletics, they love that. It shows so many qualities. Any kind of club organizations or even professional development. Think of examples, and those are the things you're going to be sharing during your interview. You've got to be confident in everything that you do. Stick to the facts. Don't ever name drop in an interview. No one cares, believe me. Stay focused on the behaviors within each situation. You got to be relaxed and comfortable when you're just talking about yourself, and that's hard, but we have to. If you don't sell yourself, no one's going to do it. This is your one opportunity. Take your time. It's better, let them ask a question, pause for just a few seconds, and it's better to take a moment to breathe and think of good examples or briefly review your notes than to answer too quickly with a poor example. All right. I threw this in here because this is something that I've been doing so many times. I mean, this is what the new graduates are contacting me about. You're probably thinking, you mean I can negotiate my salary? Oh yeah, you can negotiate more than that. But when does one do this? You do this only if they call you up they call you up and say, we want to hire you for this position. We're offering this job to you. That's the only time, right? Never say, yes, I accept right then and there. Did you know that you can have up to a week to get back with them? Yes. Now, does people do that? Well, only my students, because they're interviewing with other people and I want them to wait a week. But no, I give it to at least 3 days. So they call you up, Miss Browning, you interviewed with us and we want to offer you this position. And you say, thank you so much. Do you mind if I take a few days to think this over with my family? And that way it gives you an opportunity to think about everything about your salary. So I want you to always, when you go to an interview, I'm backing it up a little bit, always know the salary. And they may not give it to you, but you can go to salary.com, glassdoor.com, or even LinkedIn, and you can type in the name of the position with the city and state, and guess what? It's going to show you some salary ranges. Always choose the median. And so when you do this, before you go to an interview, you always have a clue if they don't even mention it. But when you're offered that position, did you know that if you've done internships or you've even have any kind of work experience, you can negotiate up to $5,000, but you can only do that when they call you and offer you the position. So don't ever accept something right away. So say you call back 3 days later and you tell them you're interested in the position, but you have some questions before you accept. And then that's when you ask about, is the salary negotiable? And they're going to ask you, what are you thinking? Now, believe me, some people will meet you there. Some people will negotiate more, maybe more vacation time or sick time, let you know about bonuses, but it is up for discussion always. Employers are waiting on it. You can negotiate when you start work, your start date. You can negotiate a lot of things, but you need to do that, because if they call you up that day and you say, yes, I want this job, guess what? After you've accepted, there's no going back. You don't look professional. After you've already started, and go up to them and say, you know, I just learned that I could have negotiated. And they say, yeah, you could have then, but you're in this now, right? You've waited too late. So be careful with that. I had to throw that in there. That was so important to me. All right, guess what? You're revving up for the interview. What should you take? I want you to have 5 hard copies of your resume. I want you to really take a portfolio of some type and have those resumes in there. Take a copy of that job description. If you've got references, I want you to type up 5 and all their information. If you need help, you'll have my email after this to show you how it's done. And then I want you to write down at least 5 to 7 questions that you want to ask them at the end. Do it in your own home, because I don't want you sitting there trying to think of things. Number one, it doesn't make you look professional. That's what they say. But the real reason is I want you to interview them at the end. They've already put you through the ringer, didn't they? All right. So I want you to be prepared with these things, because that's what you're going to take. You're going to ask them at the beginning of the interview if they want a copy of your resume, and then you're going to set that aside. And at the end, they're going to say, do you have any questions for me? You're going to be like, oh, I do. Do you mind if I pull them out? And you're going to read from them. You're going to take notes from them. Don't memorize anything, because you're going to forget. All right. And you take yourself ready and prepared. I told you be on time. 15 minutes early in person and log on 2 to 3 minutes beforehand. Please turn that cell phone off and leave it in the car. I had a millennial tell me, oh my gosh, don't tell me that. Can I at least turn it off and put it in my pocket? I just really wish you wouldn't take it at all, but if you must, turn it all the way off. Wrapping up the interview, ask your questions to get clarification. How about some training? Is there training involved in this position? If I want to continue my education, is that something the company is willing to pay? Is there any travel involved in this position? If so, can you elaborate? What is the office culture like? Does everyone get along? Do you all do potlucks? Do you all go out afterwards? Who will I report to? The most important one to me is, can you tell me the next steps in this interview process? When will I hear back from you? At the end of the interview, I want you to get business cards. And I keep telling people this and they still won't do it. Please do this, because there's a good chance you're not going to remember everyone that you interviewed with. And if they don't have a business card, have them write down their email address, because I need you to send them a thank you email. And I want you, if you're interviewing with 3 people, please don't put it on there all of them together. I want you to send an email individually and and make them all different, because they'll compare notes. I got an email from Adrienne, and do you know what? It said this. Well, mine did too. She just copy and paste it. That doesn't look good. So do it as soon as it is over. And be careful shaking hands. I can't guarantee that's the thing. I think that's the thing of the past. I don't know if you're going to be ever shaking hands again, but in an interview, I wouldn't extend my hand unless they did. And just be careful. But a nice smile would suffice. One of the questions you can never ask during an interview, especially the first one, don't ask about salary and benefits. It makes you look like that's all you care about. And you don't want to bring it up unless they do. And I do want you prepared to know what that salary is. This is a little slide that I love showing. So if you notice here, what is the most important thing that employers have said? Employers claiming they don't want applicants to be fashionable or trendy, or have bright colors. A boss has said clothes could be the deciding factor between 2 similar candidates. You see that? That's 70% and 65%. Over here, 67 people said failure to make eye contact. Well, I gave you a little tip there of how to make eye contact, or make believe anyway. 47% having little or no knowledge of the company is the most common mistake job seekers make during the interview. So as you see here, what is most important is, do I like her? Do I like him? It's a test. Remember I told you that. Those are common nonverbal mistakes, and that's from employers. Up here it says, in a survey, 2,000 bosses claim that they know within the first 90 seconds of an interview whether they will hire someone. So look at there. I love this little slide. All right. Any questions for me?
None have come in yet, but that's a good reminder, Adrienne. And for those that are watching, to feel free to use that chat to ask questions of her. So one, I'll throw you, what are the common pitfalls that you often hear about in interviews? What are those things that commonly happen that can sink one's interview before they could even get out of the gate?
I'll tell you that a cell phone has gone off. And these are employers. And you know, we host so many job fairs and we have so many different sessions. I love to hear employers. I want to make sure I am advising people properly. But bringing mama and daddy to an interview and having them sit out there, that is a turnoff. And it's like, you know, that says a lot. Like, I don't know if this person knows that they can't bring their parent to the actual job. So that's not cool. That cell phone is a problem. That's why I keep saying, please just turn it off. Don't put it on silent. You think you may have done that and you may not have. And that is a problem. Not knowing about the company or the position, these students and alumni, they need to kind of keep a tally of all the places they're actually applying to, because when someone calls for an interview, they're not certain which one that was, and they didn't do the homework and they don't know about the position they're applying for, and that's a problem. So those are some common ones I'm hearing.
Gotcha. So you talked about research. Can you expand upon how much research should one do going into an interview?
Well, you better know, if you're applying for a position, you better know what the position is and if indeed it's something you're interested in doing and can you do. I will tell you that a lot of people say it's asking, and I'm getting off track right here. Some people say, I don't want to apply for this job because I don't have the credentials. You're never going to have all of them, but you should apply for everything, especially if it's of interest to you, because you think you're not qualified, but when you walk in, they'll train you. You're going to be trained on every single job. So research, I want them to know the company's name. I want them to know what their mission statement might be, their goals, and find something that, for example, when I say relatable, they might have programs that allow you to bring families to work, or they might have a program where you have a babysitter, who knows, or they might donate money or do things together and do things in the community that you really are passionate about. So find something that you relate to, because you're not going to be able to memorize or remember things, and then you don't look like you know what you're talking about.
No, those are great pointers, Adrienne. Thank you for sharing those. So, I think earlier in your presentation, one of the things you talked about too was kind of the being prepared, and one of the pieces of advice I've always heard is, if possible, drive by, check out the office that you're to go to a day before so that you don't get hung up on where to park and whatnot. But before that, I'm one of the things, how many questions when I get called and invited for an interview, is it appropriate for me to ask a lot of clarifying questions if they don't come forward with all the details up front?
You kind of want to push for that, because I feel like you have that person and you may not ever speak to that person again. I love when they send everything through the email and they'll give you everything you need to know, and I love that. But that's not every company. But it is good to ask a few questions. Is this Eastern time or Central time? Is this somewhere that it's okay for me to drive by and check the place out before I come? How many people will I be interviewing with? Do you mind to provide me with the names? And that's about it. I have a lot of students or alumni say they weren't dressed up, but I was overly dressed. Who's trying to get the interview here? Who wants this job? You know what I'm saying? You need to think, why the employers are thinking, why should I invest in that person? Why should I even consider this person? Why should we be investing in them? And you need to make sure that you're on it, on every level.
So you gave some clues on some questions to ask at the end when you're offered the opportunity customarily to ask questions. Are there types of questions that you would recommend steering away from during that particular time frame?
Yes, salary and benefits are the main two. Okay. And let me tell you something I've heard. Anything that's going to put them on the spot, sometimes people will ask them questions like, what makes you stay here? Why do you like the job? Understand that they're not being interviewed, you are. And I know a lot of people think those are good questions, but you have to be careful, because that day they may not want to be talking about too much about themselves. And you got to be careful with those type of questions. Another one, something just came to me. What was that one I was going to say? Salary, benefits, putting them on the spot, and nothing that's going to come off negative. Like I heard someone say, well, I noticed your company filed bankruptcy. Really? You're going to ask something negative? I would not say anything negative about them. And I know you want to know, but there's some things I feel like you don't need to know or put them on the spot, and it makes you come off across kind of like, I don't know the word for it, but you got to be careful with that, I think.
No, I think that's because, yeah, to your point, you are being judged even when you're asking those questions.
That's right.
So one question that has come in, any advice for follow-up emails during the pandemic? How long should they wait? What should they say, particularly in this current environment?
So remember I told you at the end, ask what is the next step in the interview process. You can also ask, if I don't hear from you within that time frame, do you mind if I reach out to you? I always say a week after they tell you. And then if you hadn't heard anything, I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket. And that's what I tell a lot of people. Keep applying. If you have this one that your heart's so set on, be careful, because if sometimes they reach out and say, I'm so sorry, we've offered the position. And sometimes you'll never hear back from them. And I'm hoping that they'll let you know something, but I always give a week and I always write back, I was interviewed for this position. You say that you'd get back with me on this day. I haven't heard from you, along those lines, okay? But do understand that HR ties up a lot of things, and anything could have happened, and life happens. Someone on that committee may have had a death, or HR may have hung up something for some reason. So give them at least a week after what they told you, and then email them. And if you still hadn't heard anything, just keep on applying and keep interviewing until you do.
That's a good point. So any, emails pretty immediate, and particularly in this type of environment, probably the recommended approach, just from a distancing standpoint. So would you ever recommend a handwritten note?
I do. That was my number one way of doing everything. And do you know how I'm mailing things on purpose, and I'm noticing things are getting a lot later. And and you can, but I would do the email first. And if you want to do both, that's great. But I'm telling you, the handwritten is more personable. But a quick story, I had a faculty tell me when I was doing a presentation, and he kind of answered some things. He said, Adrian's telling you right. One day we had two candidates and we were hiring for a faculty position, and we hired the one, we liked them both and didn't know what we were going to do. But when that email came in and thanked us, we chose him first, and then we got the handwritten in the mail later. So you can do both, but make sure that email comes in first, because the mail is really running later than usual.
Yeah. One tip, and it's all contextual to the company, and how they're set up to. One tip I've heard before is to go out to the car, write your thank you note, particularly if you're interviewing with a small number of people, and then to go back in and ask the receptionist to leave those notes for those individuals to overcome that barrier. Because, to your point, if you wait till you get back home, drop it in the mail, your mail carrier picks it up, takes it, it adds multiple days there. And so sometimes that can work to your disadvantage.
Yes.
So, I think one of the things, we talked a little bit about reaching out to alumni in the job search strategies kind of realm. Is there value in kind of, if I'm invited to interview at Bridgestone, for example, would you recommend that I, even though they may not be involved in my interview process, reaching out to alumni that I may know or may find on LinkedIn in advance of my interview to ask them for advice?
Let me tell you, if you don't network, it's going to be hard for you to get a job. It goes hand in hand. And I know we're talking about interviews, and I speak on so many topics, but I feel like without the networking, it's going to be difficult. I have a lot of people who say, I want to go to Atlanta and I don't know a soul. And I always say, that's kind of tough. I always say, go to where you have family and start from there, because your family knows other people, but you have to network. Network goes hand in hand, and without it, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, and I often encourage alumni to seek out other alumni, a potential employer in particular, because they can usually kind of give you some advice of, this is how their interview process typically runs. They're looking for these factors, and this is what I can tell you about, even though I may not work in sales. This is what I know about the sales team. So it just kind of gives you that little bit more of insight, and kind of leveraging your alumni network, because we have alumni, 70,000 alumni profiles on LinkedIn, and it's a great networking tool in and of itself for you to go there and say, I've been invited to interview at Snack Pass.
Yes.
Do I know any WKU alumni that work at Snack Pass? If you find, hey, there's one, I wonder what insight that they can give me about this particular interview. So we haven't had any additional questions come in, Adrian. So any parting thoughts that you have before we wrap it up today?
The only thing I'm going to say, my main thing, is make sure that you're prepared, that you look the part. And I have people say, but I'm not extroverted. You better turn that on that day and then walk away and go hide in your car. Because I know a lot of people that are not, but you have to, it's about personality. It's about really laughing and smiling and putting on a show. Because if you think you're too dull and boring and you're too stiff, they're not going to get the true you, and you have to turn this on. So remember, this is all about rainbows, unicorns, and Skittles. It's all about perception of really having a great personality, and that's what it truly is. Does this person fit in with our staff? Will this person work well with our staff? If you feel like you're troublematic, you won't get the job. So make sure you're nice, friendly, smiling, and showing a little bit of personality during this interview, I promise. And if you don't get the job, it's because they were thinking about someone else internal. So don't ever think it's you, because it's not. Sometimes people get a job because of those things, and it's because people need to advance and they have to hire within. So don't think it's you, because sometimes it really truly isn't.
That's always the hardest part, is when you go through the process and you find out that it's not you. And it's definitely good advice there, and I appreciate you sharing that, because particularly right now as things get competitive, I know our alumni will be interviewing for multiple positions sometimes, and there's a lot of other individuals looking for those opportunities. And so you just take what you learn from each one and grow from that experience. So thank you so much, Adrian, for being with us today. As we wrap up, I just want to say how much we appreciate you lending your expertise to our alumni and friends. And invite everyone to check out future webinars on our website at alumni.wku.edu/Hilltoppers at work for our upcoming webinars that will be added to that calendar when they're scheduled. So thank you so much, and have a great day.